Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
A truly historic moment. The first manned mission to the moon, a symbol of achievement and mankind's enormous ambition. And this was a perspective from Earth showing Neil Armstrong's family. Armstrong's wife and 2 sons are being interviewed there on launch day as Neil Armstrong prepared to make history. Well, one of those young boys in the photo is our next guest today. Mark Armstrong is Neil Armstrong's son. He joins me from Washington. He's an engineer, an entrepreneur, and a performing artist. Welcome. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. We heard that phrase, Mark, at the beginning, one giant step phrase. Did he come up with that on his own, or was that prepared for him?
With it on his own. There was actually a big debate about whether he should be told what to say, or whether he should come up with his own words, and that's what they decided. NASA decided that it wasn't right for them to dictate the moment. So it was all Dad.
That's really neat. Now, you were 6 years old, and I think your brother was 9 at the time of the launch. How do you remember that trip? And there's the photo of you guys there.
Well, we went to Florida. We went to the Cape for the launch, and that went very, very well. And then we went back home and we watched on television, just like the rest of the world.
So was it nerve-wracking for you? Were you nervous for your dad, or?
No, I actually wasn't. We'd had a conversation before he left for the Cape, and he just seemed very confident that things would go well. He said that they only thought they had about a 50% chance of actually landing on the moon, but that he was confident that the spacecraft would get him there and back. Now, my mother, on the other hand, must have been terrified, but she hid that from us, and extremely well. I don't know how she did it, because she just must have been terrified.
Now, you mentioned your mom and how she must have been terrified and how it didn't really bother you and your brother, but your mother in the movie made you and your brother sit down with your dad for what was called the talk. Is that accurate, what happened there?
That is accurate, yeah.
Tell viewers a bit about it.
Yeah, in fact, we told Damien and Josh Singer, the screenwriter, about that had happened, and I think that was the only time that story had ever been told. So that actually happened, and my dad said very much what Ryan Gosling portrayed in that scene, and it was done very well. I think the only difference might be that we weren't we just walked away not being worried, and feeling that he seemed to be confident, so we felt confident that everything was going to go well.
And then your mom hid how she actually felt.
She did. I don't know how she did it. Yeah, exactly.
Now, there was this time frame from the day of launch and then until your dad stepped on the moon. What were you thinking during that time?
Well, as a 6-year-old, it was an exciting time. We not only there was some television coverage, not like today, but they would break in and tell you what was happening. But we also had the squawk box in our house, so we could listen to air-to-ground transmissions during the flight and really know what was happening. Now, it wasn't always easy to understand it, but we often had someone like Bill Anders or Jim Lovell or someone from NASA who would stop by and kind of check in on my mom, and could kind of help us follow along. And this is all covered very well in the new documentary film Armstrong, which I hope people get a chance to see.
Yeah, I will definitely be watching that for sure. Now, when your dad was the first man to put his foot on the moon, what do you remember about that?
Well, as a 6-year-old, I didn't really understand the historical context of what was happening. I knew what was happening. I knew, that he was on the moon, but I just didn't understand how, transformational that was. I just didn't have the perspective, of an older person. But so I was excited, but I could really more I could interpret what was happening based on the expressions of the adults that were around me. Not to mention, Walter Cronkite and others, the expressions on their faces as you watch the coverage. So those were the cues that I picked up to know that, hey, this was a big deal in the greater scheme of things.
And what was it like when he got back?
When he got back, he was the same man that he was before he left. But I think the world wanted him to be different, and he and Mom both felt that we should try to get back to the business of normal life, and they felt like that was the best upbringing for my brother and I, and that would yield the best end result.
Now, on Monday, the spacesuit your dad wore in his mission to the moon went on display at the Smithsonian. You were there. What was that like?
Well, actually, my brother was there. We look a lot alike, so it's easy to...
My apologies.
No, that's okay. It's easy to mix us up. But yes, he was there, and my daughter and I couldn't be there because we were performing our song Flight of Fancy, which is in the film, at Carnegie Hall.
Now, you have written a song and you perform this song. I want viewers to just take a listen of that, and then we're going to come back and talk about it just for a sec. Just listen a bit.
There's a job to do, I know, responsibilities down below, but right here, right now, all there is flight.
Some beautiful pictures of you, your father, your family when you were younger. What inspired you to write it?
Well, he took me up in a glider when I was 6 years old. And what struck me as I look back on that day is how peaceful it made him feel to be up there in a glider. Just sort of enjoying the moment, leaving all of his cares and his troubles on the ground. And that's what this song is about. It's about sort of stealing away those precious moments for yourself, even if it's small and even if it feels a little selfish to do so that you can kind of stay centered and stay balanced and go back to those responsibilities and be able to attack them with a renewed vigor and spirit.
And you're going to be performing this song.
We are. As I said, we just performed it at Carnegie Hall on the 16th, and we'll be performing it at the Kennedy Center here in Washington on the 20th with the National Symphony.
That I just can't imagine what that will be like for you, and the song is beautiful. How do you want people to see your dad?
Well, I want them to remember him as a guy that was a hardworking, nerdy engineer that just got an opportunity and applied himself and always tried to do the right thing. He always looked at all the sides of a situation and he tried to do the right thing. And I think if we all did that, it'd be a better world.